Okay, it's connecting. We live? Not yet. Good to go. Hey everyone, welcome. Good day, good evening, good morning for different parts of the world joining for day two of TestMu Conference. I hope day one was pretty insightful. Put in your comments on the chat. We would love to hear how you felt about day one. And here we are starting day two with a special keynote from my very good friend Maaret. She's a principal test engineer at Vaisala. And I had actually prepared, my team has actually prepared, helped me prepare a introductory script, a bio of Maaret. And this is what happens when you're best friends, right? You get to host your best friend. You forget that and you go on the floor. And that's what I'm going to do. So Maaret and I have been a partner in crime for a couple of things that we do for the community, especially around Selenium Conference. Maaret has been doing fantastic job in helping shape up different proposals. In that way, she's a fantastic educator, and fantastic at helping new faces bring up to the conference. And I'm a strong advocate for diversity, strong advocate for testing, torchbearer, I would say. She's been around testing industry for a very, very long time, probably around 25 plus years, and she has authored three different books. I think Maaret said, just type Maaret on Google, you'll actually get all the information, maaretp.com, and pretty much everything you will know about her. And I just wanted to make the chat a little bit interactive for this session. So folks, whoever are already joined and hearing this, just make a wild guess on how many conference appearances would have made until now. Maaret and I will be looking at the chat. So just go, I can see 100 plus, lol 500, 40, 76. All right, let's break the surprise. So Maaret has spoken around 28 plus countries, and over 500 sessions. So someone said, "Lol," laughing out loud, and 500. Yes, Prabhu, 500. Yes, it is over 500 conferences. And she was actually sharing a story around. She has actually put a full stop to her speaking career, like around 400, and then she resumed. And otherwise, I could imagine the number that Devi has shared, 1,000 would have already been achieved right now. So, Maaret, we are very grateful for you, grateful for having you do the keynote for us in day two of TestMu Conference, titled "Let's Do a Thing and Call It Foo." Um, Over to you. The stage is yours.
All right. You should see my slides, I hope. I do speak a lot in conferences, and being able to do that from my home sofa is part of the reason why I can do it, because I've always done this as a hobby. It's not my job, it's my hobby. It's something extra credit on top of my work, and it just happens kind of one talk at a time. By identity, I am first and foremost a testing practitioner. Being a testing practitioner, I've had a chance of listening to many people join the various organizations I work in. I've got to interview people that want to become testers for the first time ever. I've gotten to interview people who want to join as testers. And I've gotten the chance of teaching people in the community across different kind of company lines. So they are not just the people who work wherever I ended up working, but pretty much anyone who ends up in trainings and sessions and all kinds of things that I've used as a way of, originally as a way of, for me to learn how to be a better testing practitioner. And I know personally that I absolutely love testing. I couldn't imagine a better job. Like the whole feeling of, looking at an application and kind of, feeling like it whispers to you and it tells you what to do and what to try. And then all of a sudden you have this problem that just intrigues you, and then you try to understand it a little further. It's just absolutely lovely. But it's also something that people have a lot of trouble speaking about. And again, I've had a few years of practice. So today I want to give you a small experience in the things around testing that make it so hard to speak about. And I'm basically trying to convince you that instead of trying to find a single definition, maybe we should use more words to talk in an excited manner about the work we do, about the discoveries we're making. And in the end, whatever we end up calling it, sometimes it might even be helpful just not to call it with anything that is shared, so that it's somehow common for all of us. So I want to talk today about 𝒄𝒏, and I want to show you what is 𝒄𝒏 and how 𝒄𝒏 is done in the projects, in the real life, in the practitioner life that I live as part of Vaisala projects. So I chose the word 𝒄𝒏 obviously for some history and some relevance, and the relevance you can find in Wikipedia. 𝒄𝒏 is the first half of these really silly words that everyone who ends up using them too much ends up hating. They don't really mean anything. They are kind of like placeholders for things that you don't yet know what you would call them. And in programming in particular, you end up calling things 𝒄𝒏 when you kind of want to delay the moment of when you make your choice of what you would want to call it. Like you're creating a method, for example, like you're creating something that you have this thing and you are not quite sure what's the right name. Instead of spending an hour having the conversation right now on what's the right name, let's just call it 𝒄𝒏 and talk about it a little later on. And as soon as we have a better name, we would obviously go and change the name. So it's a placeholder. The identity really, as such, is unimportant, but it demonstrates this kind of like concept of you can delay the time when you're giving a thing a name. So we need this 𝒄𝒏 today. To do 𝒄𝒏, we need it because there's this general problem in testing, or well, in 𝒄𝒏 in general. When we're trying to figure out with the assignment in projects, in real life, in actual work that we have to do in projects, when you're given this assignment that you're supposed to find something, what the others may have missed. Not all of it, some of it, enough of it, not all of it, again, I emphasize not all of it, but some of what others may have missed. It's not an easy thing because you have this, empty canvas. You'd have no knowledge of what the others may have missed. If you have a specification, it tells about the things other people already might know how to look for. So that's not quite sufficient when I'm speaking about the idea of finding things others might have missed. There's also all the things we did never write in any of the specifications that kind of make sense. It's kind of the application whispers them to us when we're cultivating the skill of combining various kinds of knowledge, which we definitely need for doing 𝒄𝒏 well. So we have this kind of, high level bar where we would want to deliver software products. That's what I do for my work, where the stakeholders are happy, and stakeholders, not just the customers, also the business management of the company, also the people who have to support it so that they want to come to work also in the next upcoming weeks. We want them all, the different people, to be happy. We want them even to be delighted. And we need to know what we may have missed that might cause them some trouble. So that's the bar of we don't want to miss things. That's what I'm kind of drawing here. What I usually see in most of the projects that I end up in, I come in as a tester. They might call me a principal test engineer. It just means many years, but I still do the very much same work as the rest of the people who identify as testers. I speak to others a little bit about testing. I try things out. I report bugs. I might have some sneaky, almost rebellious ways to my reporting of bugs, which includes that I go and sit next to the developer until they fix the bug, rather than ever writing a bug report in Jira. That's one of my favorite moves. But, I might be able to do some of these things because I've built that credibility and that trust and that status that when I suggest that it might be a good idea to join me in that. But what I usually have is a team that has a good team's output. Like the team that I'm with right now, most of my time, they're actually a really good and solid team. They have a really solid output, absolutely lovely developers. Developers test so much. And they're these kind of developers that I absolutely love, that when I give them an idea of what we may have missed, they take that, they run with it, and knowing that I do too many things and I'm a little bit, I'm not absent-minded, but I'm slow on getting to some of the things because I prioritize and I do a lot of context switching. They often find themselves surprising me with this idea that, by the time you get here, here's your test automation. You don't need to do that anymore. You can review if this is, it's showing the problem, it's now gone, you won't see it ever again. Find something else we've missed. And I love these teams because there's this sense of surprise. Like they are always delighted when I tell them about the problem. Sometimes the problems are that we miss it, easy things. That the basic things that we've built already in automation are actually, there's always holes in the nets that we're building. So there's still a sense of surprise. It might be an easy thing that is a surprise, or it might be sometimes a really complicated thing that is a surprise. But what I kind of work with this team is what I call a results gap. So we want the results get from the level that the team is able to produce without someone like me to the level of having them with someone like me. And this work here is kind of what we will be fooling on today. But obviously, I need to give you a word of warning. I have also joined teams that are not like my current team. In 25 years, some of the teams that I've joined, I would call them less than good teams output on the quality information and testing. I would actually even go as far as calling them teams that expect their testers to pick up the pizza boxes that they always, after eating, leave in the middle of the living room floor. So kind of like I feel like my work might be on pointing out and on the pizza box, like, hey, we have the pepperoni pizza box is here today. Yeah, we had Hawaiian yesterday. Now the pizza box is here. So there's very small differences in what I get to mention about the boxes. It feels like it's a pattern of things that I need to find again and again and again as a tester. And the results gap is much more relevant. And obviously, if I have this pizza box type of a team, it's really difficult for me as a tester to get to that top part of it, to find those lovely surprises. And usually what I try to do is leave a team with the pizza box idea, create the developer oriented testing first without having a tester in the team, and then later go back to that team to be the person who helps again go to this kind of higher level of results. So this is kind of the domain, it's not really so much about testing. It's things we've missed, the results that we're looking for in the information, and we are not able to react to that information unless someone makes that invisible somehow visible. So usually I am looking at the developers, like I am the tester, they are the developers. And as much as we are the team and we're all in it together, we are still different. We are focusing on a little bit different things. We are sharing all of that work. We could be mixing it up in any way we like, but still there's the difference that I usually try to figure out on what's the invisible part. And the developers today in this talk, I want to replace with a computer, because I don't want to have, for demoing the foo, I don't want to have an actual person that we're picking on. So what we're picking on today when we're fooing some application is a thing that is created by GitHub Copilot. GitHub Copilot, it's a computer-assisted software authorship program, which basically means it's supposed to write code for you. It's AI in writing code. And it's been now around for a while. There's some concerns around whether it's actually automated copying something that is losing licenses in the process. That's not the conversation I really intend to go on today, but that's one of the conversations you might want to have when you are fooing an application built with GitHub Copilot. But what we're today doing is it's our developer. So we have a developer that is a computer, and we're doing the foo for that developer. That means we're accountable. We are the ones who are responsible that whatever the developer of ours is doing, we're accountable for helping that developer. It's not just us. We are again in it together, but we are equally accountable with that developer in order to build the right thing. And we're going to go this through in kind of 5 layers of what kind of things we can bring when we're fooing, and we'll come back to this list. You probably haven't seen Copilot maybe before. I put on the slides one kind of screenshot that you can see as a starting point. So the basic usual use case is you write some English, or maybe you start writing something, it auto-completes for you, it's guessing what you want. And there's this general idea that if you have the programmer intent, that it knows how to translate to code, it does that for you. So in this case, we are going to be creating what is called an important program. You can see from the slide here that there's one way of phrasing the problem, the important problem that we're fooing on today. We are the foo responsibles of that program. We are creating something that takes in numbers and creates Roman numerals, which is, kind of a common problem in the general space. So we're moving into the live IDE rather than, having things in the slides and going through something from that. So this is my IDE. As you can see, it is very personalized. It's lovely colors, and it makes me happy whenever I code. And the first thing that we'll obviously need to make sure that we can do is just make sure that we have the tools we need for today's activities. So just kind of starting with the idea of being able to run the single test that I have already written into this file, which does nothing, basically. On line 1, there's the name of the test. On line 2, it says pass, do nothing. And I can run it with PyTest. So today we're using Python, PyTest, like any of the tools. You could choose whatever is your flavor, the tools and the language. That's not the essential part. It just happens to be that this is the environment that I'm in today. So running it, just making sure that the tools work. Nothing broke while I prepared and got started. And this moment, yes, definitely the tools are fine. This is where we will start. And now we have nothing. So we needed that important program, and we have kind of like a business person who is telling us that they're willing to pay for us for this really important program that does Roman numerals conversion. So basically, they want us to create, like we could say, like create a function that takes an integer and returns Roman numeral. So you can see I intentionally wrote something different than I had written on that slide. And the English that I end up writing will have an impact on GitHub Copilot, on what it ends up proposing me. And I've had so much fun already so far on the idea of trying out different kinds of English and seeing what it gives me and what kind of options are there. But we're not really testing the GitHub Copilot. It's here in the corner of my IDE. What we want is the program that our business wants. So we know that it's a Roman numeral thing. We could, ask a lot of questions, but we have our own ideas already what Roman numerals are about. We might remember that, if you give an 1, you get an I. If you gave a 4, you give an IV. You maybe remember some of these numbers already by heart. And if you don't remember them, you can probably Google them, and you can ask someone to give you a list of those numbers. But most likely, that's not going to be complete for you when it's given you as a starting point. So we want this program that, on a high level does this translation. So for the Roman numeral thing, this is GitHub Copilot now running in. That's our programmer, and we're going to be trusting our programmer today. So we're taking what it's proposing for us, and it is now proposing that this is a lovely solution. So clearly it's giving me, some kind of like a lookup map of different numbers, and I can see that there's thousands and hundreds and like some of the concepts that I already recognize. And then it does some kind of like a magical logic, but like I really don't want to read this. I don't want to be the programmer. I want to trust the programmer, but with a reservation. So with GitHub Copilot, I can press Control and Enter, and it's giving me synthesized, other solutions. So in case I wanna, not take the first one that it was proposing to me, if I think maybe there's something clearly off already on the very first one, I could take some other ones. And again, heuristics in programming are really good for this one. So you could take the first of the list, you could take the last of the list. But if you would take the last of the list, you can already kind of review this, and just with kind of layman logic, you can see that maybe this is at least not as nice and concise. It looks like it was done by someone else's TDD exercise, where every single thing that needs to be implemented end up as his own if or else clause. So maybe since I don't really care, I'd like to just get a working solution. I have no opinions as such. I'll just take the first one that it provided me. But now our work starts. So this is what the developer did. And our job in 𝒂𝒂 is to say, find something that the others may have missed. We have maybe that invisible results gap, and it is our job in 𝒂𝒂 in making it somehow now visible. So we would probably start with writing a test. And again, like maybe we could call it TestFu just for the sake of the theme of today. And you can see that, our helpful pair programmer, GitHub Copilot, is already suggesting things for us. It's suggesting that maybe you'd want to test the number 4. Like if you want just one value, maybe 4. And in a sense, it makes sense. Instead of having, number 1 as the first, because we are not doing TDD, we are now exploring a piece of code that someone else already created, or actually not exploring, 𝒂𝒂ing, that's what I should say. We're 𝒂𝒂ing piece of code someone else was doing. So maybe, 4 is a good thing, because it's kind of like a boundary value. It's supposed to be a little different. So it seems like a good starting point to see that our program at least can run. It's not the best structure ever to put the implementation and the test in the same file, but humor me for the demo purposes today. I'll leave them in the same file so that I don't have to be moving around all different places, and I can just keep our focus on the 𝒂𝒂ing that we're doing. We can do cleanup later, we can rename things later, we can do all of that later. So delaying the moment in which we do things so that we can keep on moving. So we'll run out our tests. I'm really curious on how things go with the 4, and I didn't yet get that surprise feeling. But then again, I would be disappointed in my programmer if the basic value of 1 or 4 or things like that would give me already that surprise. It would mean my programmer has done none of that work themselves, and we would be in a pizza box type of a results gap that we need to 𝒂𝒂 against, and it means that there's so much work ahead of us. But now the question is, what would we test? How would we go about? Are we done? What values would we need to test? You might be, writing now your own speculations in the chat. That's fine. I can't see them in the moment, but I have, for the purposes of today, I've created just kind of like a basic script of the steps we're gonna go through. So we have that first thing that we created, kind of like, we can check this first one, developer intent. I want to give a 4, it gives me IV back. Input matches output, single value, maybe not the best one. So maybe I could already be adding something else here. Oh, I love 399, but I no longer have any clue if this is really correct. I could maybe actually turn this into a parameterized test. I would need to write a little bit more around it. Not really the most important thing for me to demo for you today, but it would be lovely when it wouldn't count this as one test case, but 2 test cases, and each of those test cases could fail individually. So in that moment of fooling, I'm making all these choices of how I name and structure the things that I'm doing. Obviously that's what we do whenever we are testing on pretty much any of the levels. Don't mind the code. Again, the code is, it's just a way of accessing things where there's no user interface today, because we're just testing something really tiny, which is the Roman numerals function. So just running our test again, making sure that 399 that we came up with, kind of with the help of the tooling also, doesn't actually surprise us. Looks quite nice. So developer intent part 1, input output, definitely good. We've already covered some things around kind of rules of behavior boundaries with the number 4. So in order kind of like to apply this boundary value analysis and equivalence classes, we could say that 4 is a better representative than 1 because it's a boundary value. And since we want to have the minimal things that actually give us the sufficient coverage, the boundary value maybe is the only one. So again, it takes us very little time to add both of them. It takes us very little time on running both of them. So maybe doing the analysis is even more work than the other way around. And we could even run it under coverage, which I don't want to demo today because it takes us to way too much text on the screen for a keynote level presentation. But you can run it also under coverage. That might be, the next level of the developer intent, the basic stuff. Then, we could consider kind of like, the sampling, wider nets, these 4 things all can be kind of covered with just those tests. So moving on to the next layer of kind of thinking in terms of how do we really fool properly is this domain aspect. So we are supposed to be doing this important program. It's called important program for a reason, because it's important. Like all of the programs that we're asked to spend relevant amount of time on, there's a reason why they exist. So why, oh, why would anyone care about having something like this? So if we would ask the business, they might tell us, or maybe they point us to read about this online. But there's not that many domains actually where the Roman numerals are so relevant. There's one particular domain that I learned of by just reading about stuff, which is the legislation. So when you're numbering the chapters of legal pieces and rules, it is really important that the numbering is same and it stays consistent over and over again. So maybe this could be going into something like that. But without asking business of all the use cases, we wouldn't know that. But we could also speculate on like how important, what is important, and of course asking for confirmations on our speculations is a good practice. So understanding that. And this would then kind of give us more rules. So maybe the smaller numbers are the more important ones. Maybe the bigger numbers are the more important ones. But I really I'm still happy with those 2 test cases that I have with the layman rules. I've seen kind of, this has already all kinds of things except L. What was L? I forgot what L is. L is some number that I can't even count. So maybe 40. I could add that just to make sure that, I have all the different letters, that I've seen them all. And again, getting, well, there's a C. I don't want maybe that. Maybe if I take 40, whatever it's proposing for me. Well, Excel, now I got the L. So, I could add just coverage of, let's make sure everything in the table gets covered. But then again, I'm just looking at that table right now. Like, why would I test something as simple as a map structure in Python? Like I can compare them kind of side by side here. Why would I create test cases? Maybe because I don't always review it. The executable stuff will help me, but I need to speculate on that so that I know what tests to leave behind. So I have an extra test here now. From that perspective, looks good. So then going on the next layer is kind of like the domain and the expert. I had lovely people working with me on this exercise when I was preparing it originally, about 10 people, and one of them was a real expert. He is a guy from Spain, and whenever I would ask, a number or translation between, like he was like a calculator, human calculator, and I was feeling almost like envious that I don't have this level of expertise, and that's the feeling that I get in everyday life as a tester a lot of times, that I am not the expert. The expert is somewhere else. But the idea that I would need that human calculator to teach me all of that, when I can, I can use Google, maybe I can ask him write some of the things down, maybe there's other ways of doing it rather than always relying on that so-called expert. Maybe I can learn more and more of the domain, and that's the next level of stretch that we need to have in order to do this thing. So for this application, there's a Wikipedia page. So obviously, when I'm testing something like this, I go and Google for things. And I need to do it also for the everyday application that I test at work, because sometimes the product owner, who is a specialist in the aviation domain, he doesn't know about all the things that the internet knows. And when I find something that is in conflict, that he's guiding us, I have managed to find many, many bugs where he's asking something of us that is too straightforward, or he thinks we know what that means, and we actually don't. So piquing my interest in order to find those surprises, questioning the product owner's knowledge, questioning the developer's knowledge, and helping grow everyone, including myself, is what I end up doing. So we're not going to read the entire page, but there's a couple of things that are really relevant on this page. The first one is that it seems that there is such a thing as a zero, which we didn't get test, but it is something special. And there is numbers above 3999, which is the highest number that you can normally use. But 3999 is the limit after which you will need a different way of visually representing the number. So it is actually not so straightforward to implement. So our business hasn't said it's okay to limit to 3999, but that's actually what our implementation right now limits to. That's where the max number is. So if we try 4,000, I'm again, this page, I'm using it because the other page said it's the best source for all things Roman numerals. And it's a great way also for me to figure out that, yes, 4,000 actually it looks like that as a Roman numeral. So if I will take it then back to my application here, the test target that I have. So let's kind of like add it maybe here. Here as a test, let's call it foo2, because again, I want to delay giving things a name so that I don't use too much energy on it. So, well, I don't want actually all of this stuff. I just want to get 4,000. And I'd really like to know what it does. So I don't know. So I could just, claim it does that and see what happens. I have my second test. So definitely it's not giving me IV, it's giving me MMMM. And from just the layman knowledge, we know that 4 same letters is generally not allowed in Roman numerals, the business logic. So we kind of, we're finding a bug limitation in our developers' implementation. This should be something else, but let's maybe leave the developers fixes later. Let's not add them here right now. But we find the limits by reading the specifications. We also learn when this whole business is important. We get those hints. We already talked about that. But we also learned already from those, trying to learn more about the domain than what was directly given to us. We learn about references. So we could have pages like this, where we will ask what is the number 399, and we will see that 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒃𝒂𝒂𝒃 is indeed correct, and we can verify the test case that we created here. Indeed, it seems to be correct. Or we can read even further and we can learn that there's other references like Excel. And this is then the interesting part. So with Excel, we learn that Roman numerals are not one domain. So we think we know what Roman numerals are. We think we have these, experts like the guy in Spain who knows Roman numerals. But he is actually an expert, or he was an expert, in Roman numerals in the classic way. But there's Roman numerals concise 1, concise 2, concise 3, and simplified. And they are different. For demo purposes, in Excel, I've created here the ready formulas on how you get to, there's like this different setting, or kind of like a flag that you need to set on which one you want to get. So each of these gets it with a different setting. And for example, for the lovely number 399 that we just thought was correct, when we are taking all the different kinds and we are kind of questioning which of the Roman numerals did our business actually want us to build, we are learning that actually the right answer isn't the right answer if we were expected to do a simplified. So if I made you do this as an exercise and you decided it's a classic thing, I would absolutely, as the business person, now tell you that I was expecting it to be simplified. You just didn't know how to ask me of that. And I do expect that we as testers not always successfully ask these questions, but we are working to try to ask those questions, and the developers are equally trying to ask those questions. Everyone in the teams is trying to ask those questions. Similarly, the references aspect, it might take me to things like, well, I didn't really want to write that much code in the demo today in front of you. So you might write references like get the right value from the page and just run tests against that page, run tests against the Excel so you can always compare. Or you could do things even like this, where you create a list of numbers, this in this case, just kind of like a helper function, and then you do use approval tests, which exists in multiple languages, but it just happens to be one of the things I use here in Python. Use approval tests in creating new combinations, where in a file you have all the values from 1 to 100, or all the values from 1 to 3,999. And then when you run that, we can just open here. Let's take, for example, now the classic one rather than the simplified one. I pre-run these for you. It takes, with the Excel, it takes about 3 minutes to generate this. So you could, use this as a thing that came out of the Excel. You can make your own program exactly the same way, generate exactly the same kind of a list. And if you missed anything here in the implementation out of the values that you ended up generating, it would alert you on that. So running that approval tests against this program, it would be a very small thing to do. I just want to kind of move to summarizing this at this point. And the final part on that one, definitely being the people filtering. So error scenarios, testers have an inclination of always starting from them. That's why I had today an inclination of just leaving it as the last thing. We would definitely need to also filter for people putting text in places where they don't belong, too small numbers, too big numbers, negative numbers, all of that. And we could all handle it on the same level. So to summarize, there's many ways to say this in English for Copilot. These are some of the examples that the group has generated for me so far. We tried a different one today. There's some bugs that we found by doing this full. big numbers don't work, decimal values, we could have seen that it gets truncated if we tried that today. There's some in some of the implementations boundary values wrong. There's an infinite loop that you can sometimes reveal that the error handling then can hide for you, and you might be solving the completely wrong problem, which we talked about. There's many other things you can also learn while you're testing. Obviously, you can learn that testing on a lower level or fooing on a lower level is a little faster, but it also requires a little bit different kind of knowledge, and also it feels really narrow and small compared to the things we're used to as testers. So moving between those different kinds of things is kind of relevant. This is maybe for you to review. But to the important aspect that if we were doing the foo already on a unit level, we had have a high potential of finding the problems that now are production failures as per research already while we are fooing and building the thing. It might be TDD that you're thinking of now. It might be unit exploratory testing you're thinking of right now. You might be wanting to rename the foo, but again, you've seen what it is, what we're doing, and that's what I want us to be doing, figuring out things of different kinds of answers. You can do it on any level. We did it today on very unit level. You could do it on end-to-end, on API level, everywhere. You can do it against the developer's intent, the customer's intent, and the past intent, and you're always stretching it. And I would call that maybe exploratory testing. And if you think in this full term, maybe you could also think that everything that needs to be automated gets automated while you're automating, because you're doing so much of the thinking while automating, including the decisions of not ever leaving something behind because you don't want to have too many things to implement. But it would require us to organize our work a little differently, maybe pair a lot more, maybe do that kind of things, rather than leave it to the end. Leave it to the testers to kind of deal with in the traditional sense. So I showed you foo. I think foo is that substance that connects together the stretching of everything into the right results, right level of results. I personally call what we foo today, might call it contemporary exploratory testing. I might call it both manual and automated testing. I might insist on calling it automated testing, where you get to write code for 1% of your work time. That's still automated testing. So whatever you call it, make sure you get the results out of it. That's what I wanted to teach you today, share with you today. Testing is about the results. We go find something what we've missed and try to do that so that we have fun and we are never ever bored. So yeah, that's the ideas that I had to share today.
Thanks, Maaret, for a lovely session. I mean, I would say you're given a whole new definition for the word foo. I was actually Googling foo, and now we used to do hello world and foo being the normal words that we use in programming world. But I was just Googling the word foo. It says it's a placeholder, meaningless word. But I think you're given a whole new definition of what the foo, and I think at least the testing industry, I think there's over 500 people listening to this talk, and they wouldn't forget, the word foo. Great questions already. I'll pick them one by one based on the maximum number of upvotes, Maaret. The first question is from Sri Devi. If you could look on the screen, what qualities do you expect or look for from a candidate when you interview for testing?
I'm interviewing right now. I usually look for someone who is either strong in programming, and I believe that I will then teach them testing, or someone who's strong in testing, and I will then teach them programming. I generally believe it might be easier to teach them programming than testing. I have a complete newbie who didn't know either and is actually pretty capable now after 3 months at the project in both, and there's a lifetime of more learning. I am not done. I am still a junior after 25 years. There's every day things that I learn. So look for that learning potential.
I would say that was a very humble from you, Marit. Slightly related, even though this question is down in terms of ranking from an upward. When did you feel confident enough to step into the test lead role?
I don't know if I ever felt confident enough. It's actually really weird, this whole confidence thing. At some point, you just start kind of like, fitting that kind of a cape on you, and start taking the lead. I believe that in Agile teams, everyone is a leader, and we actually need to start with that earlier than I might have, officially started. But I think I was hired in a test lead position at 5 years at some point. I was given a managerial position on developers, so power over developers, at around 20 years. And again, now I'm just again an individual contributor. I'm not supposedly a lead, but you can see how I speak. This is how I speak. It's hard to not consider it leading or influential when it happens in the office.
Lovely, Maaret. Thank you. Next question from Kunal. Do you measure how your current testing approach is working? How do you adjust if it's not? I'll just add one more, like how often do you do that?
So I don't measure necessarily testing. I measure the whole team, and I do try to figure out how much we're leaking things that the customers are seeing. I refuse to give numbers like how many bugs I found. I never will summarize that to the managers, but I can definitely tell that the ready thing that was already before me needed 9 fixes after everyone else was done. So I know my results gap, and I can always tell you that in numbers. But obviously, I also know that I will still miss maybe three more, maybe five more, maybe 500 more. You never know. And I am as careful as the rest of the team in listening what the customer has to say and what we can learn on each one of the misses.
Right. Some new question from Shamshad. How will you estimate the time as if you go with the described approach, it will take enormous time to complete the story?
It actually doesn't. For finding those 7 problems took me 2 hours. So maybe you should learn to do exploratory testing. So again, time awareness, cost awareness is one big part of what I call contemporary exploratory testing. You don't need the test cases written down. You maybe have existing automation, maybe you can add to it, you can share it with the team in so many different ways. It doesn't have to be that big, but it would be a whole different conversation. And I definitely invite you to ping me, and we should have that conversation on how to do it. It's not that big.
Next question from Mahati. Over 500 talks, Maaret. What is your secret sauce?
Not planning and not thinking about it, just doing one by one. If it's an hour tonight, if it's an hour in 2 weeks, if it's some thinking in between, and if it's all kind of somehow connected, if I'm talking about my real life experiences here, uh, it just happens on the side. So don't overplan.
Cool. One last question. This has been consistent across all the sessions, irrespective of the talk. But it would be lovely to hear your opinions or thoughts, Maaret.
So we'll be testing more AI created software like GitHub Copilot created pieces in the future. Maybe that's the first thing. I also believe we'll see nice tools that we haven't seen before, even in the space of exploring and remembering what we have already thought about and what have we forgotten, kind of like prompts on what kind of things might be. So I have a positive outlook on getting new kinds of things that help us, but it will never replace us.
Cool, cool. Thanks, Maaret. Thanks for your lovely and insightful session. And we are almost end of the session. Thank you so much again. And for those of you listening, I hope this has been quite an insightful session for all of you. The chat session was really interactive and wonderful questions, and you all were cooperative in upvoting, helping me choose the right questions to ask Maaret. Thank you so much. And this is just the beginning of the day for TestMu Day 2, and a lot of insightful talks coming your way. And stay tuned. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Maaret.